Hello and welcome to the pregame chat. I'm Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox and former Patriots linebacker Matt Chatham. So you guys might be able to tell, it's a little windy and rainy out here. I'm about to fly away, I think. But we got ourselves an intriguing matchup, one that we've been looking forward to all offseason. Patriots and Cleveland Browns, maybe not quite as sexy as it looked over the offseason when everyone was expecting the Browns to be the next big thing, but still one of the best matchups of the Patriots so far season here. Big news week, as Matt and I can attest to, because I think we had to do like 10 reshoots over the course of the week because news kept on changing. But biggest news of the week was that Mohamed Sanu, brand new member of the New England Patriots, traded a second-round pick to the Falcons to get him, basically to make a roster spot for him. The Patriots placed Josh Gordon on injured reserve, so that's sort of a one-for-one swap there at wide receiver for the Patriots. But for Sanu, I would expect something like, we got Scott Zolak walking right in the middle of the shot. Perfect timing there.
Weekly tradition now.
So for Sanu, I would expect maybe 25-ish snaps. That's probably the over-under there. That's what we've grown accustomed to seeing from new wide receivers entering this Patriots system, going back to Josh Gordon last year, Antonio Brown this year. But, I mean, Tom Brady seemed really excited to work with Mohamed Sanu, and I think that he could be a pretty big factor in the offense this week.
One thing I'll say, Doug, and I'm completely in line with you about an expected sort of rate and deals like that based upon historical stuff. I think the conditions might actually help him get more reps, because my thought here is when you're attempting to learn a new offense from that receiver position, and obviously I've never done that, but the notion that's always been so difficult here is learning the option component at the top of routes. You have to run down the field, read the coverage, and then you have a couple different alternatives of what to do. That takes time. I think a part of any offense for an experienced pro like Sanu that you don't need to learn is tell me where to line up and tell me who to block. And that's the thing that Mohamed Sanu has always been so good at. He is one of the best blocking receivers in football. So a good way to earn more reps in this sort of accelerated environment is get on the field to block. And I think you just happen to catch a monsoon here on a day where maybe they're not throwing the ball 45 times, maybe they're running it 45 times. And in that environment, well, shoot, hey, tell me where to stand, tell me who to block.
Yeah, I don't think this was a move that really surprised many people who follow along with the Patriots, because the Patriots and Mohamed Sanu have been linked basically throughout Sanu's entire career, even going back to when he was coming out of the draft at Rutgers. Bill Belichick obviously loves Rutgers guys, and it seems like every year there's been a trade rumor or a free agent rumor of maybe Mohamed Sanu could eventually come to the Patriots. And as you mentioned, the comments from Tom Brady this week were very notable about Mohamed Sanu, especially given the way that he has kind of remarked on several of the Patriots' younger wide receivers this year. To hear him kind of just openly praise Mohamed Sanu after only being on the practice field with him for, 2 or 3 days at that point, it definitely seems like Tom Brady likes what he can bring to this offense. I think he can be an obvious benefit to this offense, especially now with Josh Gordon gone. I think he actually fits this offense a lot better than Josh Gordon did even. He's a very different player from Josh Gordon, but got a lot of Julian Edelman-esque tendencies in there. He's a smart player, works over the middle a lot.
And big.
Can block well, much bigger than Julian Edelman. So, I think he's definitely going to be a very positive addition to this team.
Before we jump off Sanu, though, real quick here, Doug, I think it actually makes for an interesting contrast that it happens to be this week that he arrives. For me, he's big Jarvis Landry. He's a lot like, when we remember Landry in Miami, really tough, crack block guy, is just like a dog out there on the outside. He's meant to be that for Cleveland. Sanu is that kind of guy, can catch gobble at a comparable rate, do all the little things that people love in a Landry, but he does it with a much bigger body. It's a body very near Josh Gordon's. I think that was one of the unfortunate contrasts of the week when we got to see them out there on the field together. It was kind of nice watching the two of them jog out the field. It's like, oh, there's another dude.
Very big boys.
Yeah.
Devin McCourty mentioned this week the thing that he loves about Mohamed Sanu is his toughness. Sanu actually went to Rutgers as a safety, then moved over to wide receiver, so Devin McCourty certainly knows him well. They're playing in the secondary. Mentioning off the top that this was a premier matchup in the NFL this year, Browns and Patriots here in Week 8. Hasn't really wound up being that way because of the Browns' struggles, and I think that, I said it, and I thought that you made a good point this week, Matt, that the Browns have a talented roster, but they have those blue chip guys and not a whole lot below them. You're talking about, Baker Mayfield that everyone had high expectations for, but you mentioned him, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb. But who else do they have? And who's their head coach? Because it's Freddie Kitchens, and he does seem to be swimming a little bit early in his head coaching career from what I've seen.
Yeah, because that's always been sort of something that bothered me a little bit, because I do get the idea of talented rosters, and we usually gravitate toward who might have the most All-Pros or who might have the most Pro Bowlers. When we talk about, now, I think that kind of formula works really well in the NBA. You got
for sure.
you got three. You got the most talented
10-man
roster.
rosters,
That's what it is. In this league, having 3, 4, 5 blue chip players, whatever, 22 got to go in the field. So something you're going to need to be to have that moniker, in my view, and have it be accurate. You're going to be really good at like 70 to 80% of your guys. You can't be blue chip, monstrous fall off. That's not a talented roster. That's just an unnecessary concentration of assets. And I think the Browns really feel that way after 6 games. You see a team that's got a lot of holes. This is an offensive line that has only retained one of their own. Joe Batonio, if I'm saying that correctly, yeah, he's the only home ground player on their entire offensive line. The rest of the other 4 spots are cobbled together additions. Now, you're going to go out there and spend all this money on Odell Beckham Jr. and Landry, and then you get the first overall draft pick at quarterback, and you got a cobbled together line, and you actually Chubb back there as well, really nice first round draft pick. That's not a talented roster. That's a giant roster hole for the thing you need to support those things you spent money on. Flip side of it, Myles Garrett, stud, of course. Olivier Vernon on the other side, stud, of course. A lot of holes in the linebacker unit. Not the best defensive line at the other 2 spots. Secondary okay with Ward, but it's not a deep roster top to bottom. And when I just went through that, guys, I'm talking starters here. When you want to talk really, really deep and talented rosters, tell me what happens when 1 or 2 of them go down.
Right.
That's when you learn something. Ndoku, I hope I'm saying this right, with a tight end, Njoku was a really intriguing sort of up-and-coming tight end position, a guy at the tight end position. He goes down on IR. They've really struggled to find much production at that spot. So to me, that's not a talented roster. A talented roster is like this one, the Patriots have, where you can weather in, week out. Patrick Chung's down this week, whatever. Dante Hightower's down this week, whatever. James White's got to miss a week, whatever. Kyle Van Noy's down a week, whatever. And then they just keep rolling. That is a talented roster.
And we mentioned it when we talk about the Patriots' kind of sustained success. It's that middle class of the roster that is very difficult to build in 1 year. That's why you don't see many teams in the NFL go from being kind of down near the bottom of the standings to kind of vault up into contendership in 1 year. You can go out and add the Odell Beckhams, you can add the kind of big stars, but until you build that middle part of the roster, it's really hard to have sustained success, which I think is part of what we've seen from the Browns so far this year. They're only 2-4 through 6 games. Freddie Kitchens, as you mentioned before, kind of looks a little bit over his head in his first kind of NFL head coaching role, and this team is, it was definitely overhyped before the season, which I think a lot of people could have seen coming. I think it looked like a team that maybe wasn't quite ready, but yeah, they're definitely having some growing pains so far.
Briefly on that same idea, when you concentrate assets to just a couple players that play the really expensive positions, like say OBJ, put OBJ and Landry together, they both make huge numbers, and then all of a sudden you're scoring 18 points a game, 22 points a game. It's an over-allocation because if you're going to spend on it, you need to have production from it. You got the quarterback that's struggling with the interceptions and things like that. But this was really to your point of the middle class. How can you possibly have one if you've got $25, $30 million of wide receivers or whatever it may be that aren't putting up 30 points a game with that top quarterback you have? As soon as that's not happening, you got a jacked up roster.
We should also mention real quick that the Browns did bench their starting left tackle this week, so now they're going to have a depth option there, which obviously, as you just mentioned, they do not have a lot of depth on this team.
Learn on the fly against this defense. Good luck.
Expectations were highest for this Browns team on Baker Mayfield. It's sort of funny watching games on Sunday. He kind of turned into the face of the NFL in all these commercials. Yet, he has 5 touchdowns and 11 interceptions on the season. And now he's facing off a buzzsaw defense against the New England Patriots, who have allowed 1 touchdown and have 18 interceptions on the season. Every single time I say that, I'm amazed by it. Those are just bonkers numbers. 1 touchdown, 18 interceptions. So
second place team on that list has 9.
Yeah, it's just, the 1 touchdown is almost the craziest part about it. The only touchdown they allowed was to Daniel Jones. No quarterback has obviously thrown more touchdowns than interceptions against the Patriots. Every single quarterback they've faced has thrown an interception. So if that trend follows, and if Baker Mayfield keeps throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, if the Patriots keep getting more interceptions than touchdowns, then after this game, you could be looking at a really, really ugly stat line for Baker Mayfield, where suddenly he might have 5 touchdowns and 14 or 15 interceptions on the season. And as you can tell, as I said earlier, we're standing out here in the pouring rain, so that makes things even more difficult for Baker Mayfield. The Patriots also have been excellent against first and second year quarterbacks. I think they've won 20 straight now. Baker Mayfield is a second year quarterback. Guy the Patriots faced last season, Sam Darnold, also a second year quarterback. What the Patriots do? Didn't allow a touchdown, had 4 interceptions, shut out the Jets. So this is all a recipe for disaster for Baker Mayfield. He has to overcome a lot of odds to play well in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it was going to be that anyway. We were talking about that anyhow. And then you add in the monsoon, and we're talking about a little bit shorter quarterback. We're talking about a guy who doesn't have huge hands. We're talking a guy that doesn't drive the football real well anyhow. He's more of a placement and anticipation and moxie guy. Main beverage there for you folks. But he's a guy.
Gross main beverage.
Oh, I love it. But he's one of those guys that I think when everything's going great, he's got that X factor or whatever. But when you strip him of the comfortable conditions, it's going to be tough. And I think we go back to, I would add on to Doug's thing of interceptions and just go straight takeaways. They're at 22 when you add in the fumbles. This group has got a great sect of dudes like Patrick Chung, like Jonathan Jones, like Devin McCourty, Jason McCourty as well, Hightower, Collins. We can go down sort of the list and the history of these guys with ball disruption. And guys that have the wherewithal to punch a ball, to strip a ball, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Usually in the NFL, everything's moving so damn fast. I know this is a player. I can't even remember the time where I was ever on the ball and I attempted to punch it. You're just trying to tackle him. You're trying to blow him up, hit him as hard as you possibly can. They have guys who control the tackle well enough and still know enough to get in and get the ball. They're on pace for 25 at the midway point disruption plays, which would be 50 on a season if they could hold that, which would be the biggest in the last 20 years. So it's just stupid the pace they're on, and they're going against guys who already struggle with that notion. So good luck.
Yeah, to that too. I think that also kind of plays into how or why they've been this secondary has been so productive this season, because they do have that kind of fight through the ball, fight through the catch mentality. I actually went back and looked at some of their games this year. They have 12 pass breakups this year where the receiver got his hands on the ball first. So those are kind of not just being in the right position to be able to slap it away. Those are literally being able to knock the ball out of an opponent's hands, and that's one of the many reasons why this team has been able to be so successful.
It's interesting that you say that, too, because we say that phrase ball skills a lot, right? So you get a 40-yard dash, you get a three-cone, you get a long jump or whatever, broad jump kind of thing, vert, all that kind of stuff. Those are the measurable things. And you'll even get sort of passes defensed and sort of those metrics that'll tell you how often guys make a play on the ball. Ball skills can mean the way that you sort of manipulate your body in the air to make a pass or make an interception. A lot of times you're beat. And a lot of times ball skills are arriving half a second late and getting it off him, or either punching it out after the completion's been made. They just have really compiled an interesting list of guys that are really good at that particular skill.
It seems like every week we're talking about some sort of big-time pass rush the Patriots are facing, or going back to the last few seasons, we always talk about J.J. Watt or Von Miller or Melvin Ingram or Joey Bosa. We talk about them all week, and then they wind up doing nothing against the Patriots' offensive line and against Tom Brady. This week, Patriots are going up against Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon. And you kind of feel like it might possibly be different this week. I know we always say this, but the Patriots do have a banged-up offensive line. They've got Marshall Newhouse at left tackle. Those guys have not been giving Tom Brady as much time as they have in the past to get rid of the quarterback. Tom Brady has been throwing the ball away more. He hasn't been quite as good under pressure. So I'm actually very curious to see if this week is a little bit different and if Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon can actually get to Tom Brady and get through that offensive line.
So one thing I'll say about these guys by profile, Garrett is the freak. I mean, Garrett is Mario Williams of a decade ago. He's just bigger than everyone. He's faster than everyone. He's not so heavy. He can kind of do everything. He's one of the real unusual athletes in the entire NFL. He can still make a corner in conditions like this, but guys, what we're on is really slick. It's really squishy. Generally, in situations like this, a guy like Marcus Cannon, who's a bull, and has had some really great matchups where I think he's won them against J.J. Watt and guys like Bosa and things like that, where you really expect, hey, this might be one where the blue chipper wins this thing and Cannon steps up. Scar really loves to antagonize him. He loves to really get after him and challenge him on weeks like this, and Marcus has a habit of stepping up. But when I sort of mention the conditions, when you have a really, really big-butted, thick right tackle like Marcus, you're going to have to go through him on a day like this, which kind of plays to his strengths. Yes, I think Myles could win a corner every now and again, but the further you go up the field on this, it's really difficult to retrace and get back down because the footing's so slick. Vernon. I've been doing this for years, folks. Vernon. He's not Von Miller, but he's a 260, 270 guy who actually has really great strength. I think he's a little closer to Trey Flowers as far as like body type and his ability. Sort of a counter guy that really has a nice sort of a collection of moves. So he can be a guy that might win up and under, and that's what I would look for today with him in Newhouse, or if they're flipping around. Can they handle counters? Because guys probably aren't going to run up around the edge. Or if they do today, Tom Brady would actually kind of love that.
Yeah, one note on Myles Garrett, who currently is tied for the NFL lead in sacks with 9 in 6 games this season. He's a little bit different from a Von Miller or from both of the pass rushers that the Chargers have, in that he switches sides pretty frequently. He'll rush. His kind of rush
like a Clowney,
splits.
Is that fair? Like a Clowney,
similar to that, but he'll basically have a pretty equal split from rushing from the right side and rushing from the left side. So it's not just they're not able to kind of say one guy, Marcus Cannon, this is your guy this week. They have to get Marcus Cannon and Marshall Newhouse prepared to face Myles Garrett in this game, and I think Myles Garrett, skills-wise, probably has the edge over both of those players. So this is going to be a very tough matchup. I think you'll see a lot of quick passes, which is usually the way that Tom Brady likes to kind of negate these pass rushes. But this is, I think, the clearest way for the Browns to either win this game or at least kind of keep it close is for Myles Garrett to have a Myles Garrett-type game and really get Tom Brady off his game.
You had an interesting tweet about Tom Brady this week saying that, some of the hidden things that he does well and that really makes him the greatest quarterback of all time. I think that, sometimes you see on Twitter people, he's got wide open throws, or they highlight throws that Aaron Rodgers makes or Russell Wilson makes, or some of these guys with potentially bigger arms. But what is it about Tom Brady that makes him so good that some people might not notice right away?
So I remember this from practices back in the day, and Tom is really good about he's over dramatic with the way he moves his shoulders and his eyes. He's doing it. He practices doing this. He works on all this stuff to move safeties and move linebackers. He's really good at that. But as he's gotten to be sort of an older player, I think he's kind of taken it up notches that even I don't recall then. And those years that we were with the Jets, I noticed this on I had a particular play that jumps out to mind. It's sort of a nightmare for me, but playing here on this surface, and Brady would begin to turn his shoulders one way, because shoulders and head looking a certain direction is going to look a certain way to a defender from depth. So, a linebacker that's 15 yards from him by the time he's doing that, a safety that's 15 or 18 or 20 yards away, he's doing this with his eyes or with his head and shoulders, but his eyeballs are still looking back the other direction. That's what's kind of cool about today's HD cameras, and you get the overhead flying, the real zoomed in thing. You can see Tom real calmly turn everything. So if you're seeing it from afar, you think you see him across the field. He gets that reaction the whole time he's eyeballing something that way. He quick turns and flicks it. I mean, that's not throwing it underhand behind your back. That's it's not the jump pass like Mahomes, but that is some ninja stuff, man. That is high level quarterback.
Subtlety.
Yeah.
Quick note before we get into our keys to the game. Bill Belichick would win his 300th
Woo!
game. And Mike Reese put this on his notes this morning. His first career win as a head coach was with the Browns against the Patriots.
Wow.
His 300th win could be with the Patriots against the Browns. So certainly interesting there. Let's get into those keys to the game on offense. I'll just be real brief. It's what we talked about earlier. Stop Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon, because if you can stop those guys, then Tom Brady's going to have enough time to throw, and everything can kind of go as expected. But if Tom Brady starts to get beat up, if he starts to turn the ball over, which we've seen from him these last few weeks, then, it's raining, it's crazy out here, things could go a little bit haywire.
Yep, seconded. I totally agree. I think that's going to be the big key to the game for Cleveland's defense. We should also note that Shaq Mason is a little bit banged up. We're still not sure whether he will play in this game. He sat out the Patriots walkthrough earlier in the week with an ankle injury, was limited in practice the last 2 days. Yeah. So we still I haven't seen any report or indication of whether he will play in this game, but obviously that would be another large loss for the offensive line. So stop those guys, stop Myles Garrett, stop Olivier Vernon. I think that's the key to the game here.
Okay, so we built this whole thing up, and I think fairly so, that the Browns really got to figure out a way to handle ball disruption. They really got to be good with the ball, or they are screwed. I think conversely, the Patriots can't give the Browns an opening by having poor ball security themselves. So I think this has to be a really smart Patriot-type day of ball security. And it's to the point you guys are making about Garrett and Vernon as well. Vernon. Anyway, so basically the idea, though, is you got to hang on to the damn thing, right? You can't have a bad snap, which, at moments there's been issues with Karras and Tom getting up on the same page. I think they're clean on that now, but on a wet day, you just never know how the center exchange is going to go. No fumbled stuff in the backfield with the backs, no look passes where the ball just simply goes out.
Had that sack fumble touchdown a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. But just, this has got to be a day where everyone who handles it, right? And in saying that, we did talk a little bit about how the edges are going to be blocked or blocked relative to pass rush. I'm really interested to see that combination together of Tomlinson and Ben Watson blocking an edge either with Cannon or with Newhouse against those big ends. Really getting movement on the edge and having a big Sony Michel day. It's set up really well for that. There have been some backs against some of the other opponents the Browns have had big days. The conditions call for it today.
Defensive key for me is all about Odell Beckham Jr. because he is a big play threat. Patriots were having Sam Darnold seeing ghosts last week by disguising their coverages, using some cover zero blitzes. Not sure if you can do quite as much of that against the Browns since they do have higher powered weapons in there with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. They might still do a little bit of it. I'm sure they'll still disguise their coverages, but it really is to me about stopping Odell Beckham Jr. You've got the best cornerback in the NFL to do it in Stephon Gilmore, but it is also his biggest challenge of the year so far.
Yeah, I think the pass rush is the biggest key to the game for the Patriots here, especially because the Browns' offensive line, not great to start with. As we mentioned earlier, they're going to have some new pieces in there,
right.
And the Patriots just do so well. The reason that they're so productive and effective against these young quarterbacks is that with the schemes they run and the blitzes and all the disguise, the quarterback they don't know what they're seeing. That's what the seeing ghosts is that Sam Darnold mentioned last week. The two second-year quarterbacks they've played so far this year, 0 touchdowns, 7 interceptions,
Yep.
Josh Allen and Sam Darnold. I think get after them, get that pass rush going, and it's hard to imagine, even with the weapons that the Browns do have outside, if Baker Mayfield can't get on the ball, then they're basically useless out there.
For sure.
Maybe a pharmaceutical recommendation here, like a tagline: "No Chubb, no chance." So I think this is one of those.
We went there.
Yeah, we did. So I think this is one of those weeks, though, where that if you're the Browns, you saw that craziness in the Jets game where there's guys flying in, flying out. You don't know who's coming.
Yeah.
It's 0 across the board. There was one particular play. Doug and I were talking about it during the week, and we were saying, there were. The deepest Patriots defender on the field was at 4 yards. Like, I've never seen anything like that even in youth football.
No respect.
Zero, right? So on a day like this, you just don't want to have the big broken plays. And I think one of the weird things that the Browns actually may have in their slight advantage, may it be, is to pull into some big units themselves and make the Patriots get out of that stuff, right? Yeah. They come out in 2 or 3 tight ends because it's just nasty out there. You can't really screw around as a defense. You can't be playing 7 defensive backs and the linebackers all, twisting around and doing craziness. You have to play street fight stuff. And street fight stuff, if we end up with some ugly 13-10 game, could actually benefit the Browns. So if they can get Chubb going, and they can keep the Patriots out of their sub stuff where they just go wild, that actually works in the Browns' favor. In other words, slam the door on the Chubb portion of the game. Double up on Odell as is necessary. Don't miss tackles on those guys to let some big plays in the back door, and I think this game's a walk.
Sorry, I was buried in my phone there. I was just checking the last-minute lines. Patriots favored by 10.5. Over/under is 43. Let's get into Chatham's choice. What are you thinking on this game, Matt? Still wet.
I'm thinking under. Let's put it this way, folks. The Browns in 6 performances this year have been under 34 3 times. They've also got 2 about 30-point losses under their belt. They also have a 2-score win on a very decently good Ravens team. So they're a real roller coaster of a team. I think the conditions for a team that already has had games where their total on days where they played pretty good defense go low anyhow. This pulls the scores down, in my experience. It doesn't always do it, but 8 out of 10 times you get something like this. The way the Patriots have been playing defensively anyhow, we can all sit here and guess how the score is going to come out as far as the line. I just think the conditions here are going to dictate the kind of game you see. The safest dollar's an under on that 43 in my view.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that my umbrella hasn't flown away at some point during
Or
the show.
flipped.
Or flipped.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game here. I do think it's going to be kind of a sloppy game, but I'm going to take the Patriots -10. I think this is a high teens to low 20s win for the Patriots. I just think they're too talented, they're too sound, and I don't think the Browns are kind of ready for this level of competition.
I'll split the difference there. I'm going with Matt on the under there. Just as my umbrella slowly blows away.
Ridiculous.
All right, well, let's get out of here and get dry and get out of this wet cold raininess.
Yes.
Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow Matt on Twitter at Chatham58. Follow Zach at Zach Cox NESN. Follow me at Doug Kide while you're at it.